Hey pen people! A while back, a European pen company reached out to me and asked if I would like to review one of their fountain pens. Their company is called Ashera, and when I looked up their website and some videos by pen people like SBRE Brown, I was pretty blown away by what I was seeing. Their pens are big, stunningly beautiful, and just really different from anything else that's out there. There are things about this pen that I have never really seen before, and they just seem like a really cool company. For example, every time someone buys one of their pens, they plant 250 trees. I don't think that Ashera's 3-member team is out there doing the tree planting, but a chunk of their proceeds goes to planting those trees. A much bigger chunk than with a lot of companies that donate to the environment. All right, now let's dive into what this pen is all about, including some things to keep in mind before you make a purchase, as well as do a writing sample and all that kind of stuff. First, the box, which I don't normally talk about because boxes aren't that interesting. You're not buying a box, you're buying a pen. So let's review the pen, but this time I have to review the box because it's super cool. It's made out of this lovely walnut wood. It's very solid, sturdy, and the way it opens is magnets. So the whole box comes apart and there's a nice little spot for your pen there. And then on top here, there's this divot that the pen rests really nicely in. So you can actually use it as a pen rest. So this box does a really good job as a functional item, not just something that your pen arrives in, but something you can use along with your pen every day if you want to. Now, onto the pen itself. This is the Aeon? Don't exactly know how to pronounce it. It's a wooden fountain pen, and my particular one is made out of light buckeye burl. It's so eye-catching, it almost doesn't even look like wood. And part of the reason for that is that they lacquer each of these pens with 8 layers. And that, along with the qualities of this buckeye burl material, gives this pen some chatoyance, which is a word I learned from Fig Boot on Pens. Thank you, David. It basically means that there's kind of a shimmering depth to the material. So very, very pretty. Lots of different textures and shapes. It's just a pen you can stare at for forever. As I mentioned, this is a big pen. It's probably the current biggest pen in my collection. For comparison, here it is next to a Lamy Safari and a TWSBI Eco. One thing about this pen that is very unique, something I have not seen before, is the shape. Not just the kind of pointed cigar shape, that's not necessarily groundbreaking, but what I notice about this pen is that it's actually not symmetrical. It's sort of lopsided. It's subtle, but it's there. I reached out and asked about that, and they said, yes, that is absolutely intentional. And they used the word ellipsoid to describe the shape of the pen. And that shape lines up perfectly with the orientation of the nib. So as you're holding this pen, that slightly more curved part of the pen rests in your hand, while the slightly straighter part of the pen is up on top. So it kind of adds to the ergonomics of the pen in a very subtle and interesting way. The grip section is fairly long and girthy, and it's made out of titanium. It's not the grippiest grip section ever, but it's also not the slipperiest. So I find it pretty comfortable to use. With it being winter time, sometimes my hands get especially dry, and then maybe they slip around a little bit, but in general, I have not had any issues with this being a comfortable pen to use. For now, they are using Bock nibs. This is a 14 karat gold nib, and when I first got this pen, I had some issues with the flow. So I reached out and said, okay, this pen is pretty dry. Not sure if that is exactly how it's supposed to be. And they said, yeah, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. But luckily, they were in the process of transitioning out their plastic feeds and replacing them with ebonite feeds. They sent me an ebonite feed, I put it in this pen, and it's nice. I like it a lot. It flows much better. It's still not the wettest pen ever, but it is wet enough that I feel like this is actually a very expressive pen. I love the large size of this pen. It just feels very commanding in my hand. It feels almost like I'm waving a magic wand around as I write. It's really fun. The price of this pen depends on the wood you choose. This particular one, the light buckeye burl, is currently $950. Some of that price comes from the materials of the pen. You know, you've got titanium, you've got ebonite, you've got 14 karat gold, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of the price comes from the manufacturing process itself. These are not quick to make. Like I said, it has 8 layers of lacquer on it. And the wood parts of this pen are made by hand from start to finish. Also, my understanding is that burl like this is really hard to turn on a lathe because you've got all of these knots and twisting grain patterns. And that's of course what makes the pen so pretty, but it makes it really difficult to work with. And on the Zoom call I had with a couple members of the company, they were talking about how sometimes these pens just don't work out. I recall them saying that sometimes they even just kind of explode on the lathe because they hit a spot that was just too hard or something. So for every pen like this that turned out beautifully, there are probably other blanks that they tried to turn and it just didn't work out. So that adds to the complexity and time that goes into this. So I'm not gonna say that this pen is worth close to $1,000. I leave that judgment up to you. Everyone feels differently about what they want to spend on a pen. But I will say that to me, the price tag makes sense relative to the cost of the materials and the time it takes to produce a pen like this. Not to mention the cool box it comes in. I'll show you how this pen writes in a second, but first I want to make you aware of one consideration that you should just be aware of before you buy this pen. And that is, I'm not really sure what to make of the threading on the cap. It's triple threaded, which is pretty cool, and the cap comes off in about half a turn. And I think the reasoning there is that it makes it very easy to remove the cap, much easier than most screw caps. But sometimes I wonder if it comes off a little too easily. Sometimes when I go to uncap this pen, the cap already feels kind of loose. So personally, I feel like I would be more confident in how this pen caps if it had the more typical 3/4 turn setup. But on the other hand, there are a couple of reasons why maybe the way it's threaded isn't an issue at all. First, this isn't exactly an EDC pen or a pocket pen or a pen you're really going to be traveling with or anything like that. This is a big pen, and I really think that it's intended to be at your desk, nestled inside of or on top of this beautiful little box. This is a letter writing pen. This is a novel writing pen. It's not really a street pen. So I don't think the cap coming off easily is really gonna cause any problems. It's just that it doesn't feel quite as secure as it could, which just bothers me a little bit. But again, on the other hand, with the titanium components here, it is metal on metal with the threading, you can crank this down kind of tighter than you would with, say, a TWSBI Eco or something like that, where it's acrylic threads that you have to be a little more careful with. You definitely don't want to torque it down too much, but you can give it a little more pressure to keep it closed, and I think the pen can handle that without any problems. And when I do that, this thing's not coming off unless I want it to. So the way that the cap goes on isn't a deal breaker, but it's something just to keep in mind. Make sure it's something that you are on board with. So now, let me show you how it writes. All right, here we go, and I have this little Midori A6 that I'll be using. I'm just gonna put it under this other fountain pen test that I did a while back. So this is a quote from W.S. Merwin, and this might be the 3rd time I've talked about it on my channel. I just love it so much. And I recently read the whole poem where this came from, or at least reread it, and it's so good. I've got it linked in the description. It is such a good little poem. This is just how it opens. On the last day of the world, I would want to plant a tree. And I just feel like that's such a good quote for a company that makes wooden pens and actually plants trees. I think W.S. Merwin is a kindred spirit to Ashera, because W.S. Merwin, one of the things he did with his life is he planted a lot of trees, a lot of palm trees. He's passed on now, but I believe his palm tree preserve is still alive and well in Hawaii. I think it has a lot of rare or endangered species there. So really cool, and I think it's a fitting quote for this pen. So like I said, this is a fine nib, and it's not super wet, but it can be very precise if you want it to be, and it can be more expressive as well. And that's one thing I really like about it a lot. So I found myself, as I was journaling the other day, I found myself putting some extra flourishes in things just because this is just kind of a flourishy pen, at least for me. So it's really fun to write with. You can get maybe a little flex out of it, but I think for a gold nib, it's fairly stiff. I don't really mind though. It seems like a good nib to me. It's fairly smooth for a fine nib, and it does a good job. So thank you to Ashera for sending me this beautiful pen to try. And thank you also to David Newcomb for being my newest channel member. Channel memberships are great, but if you're not able to support me financially, that's totally fine. Just a thumbs up is super helpful, as well as watching another video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.